The spotlight always felt like home, but tonight was different. Standing at the podium of Mobile's annual charity gala, my hands trembled as I gripped the microphone. The sea of expectant faces before me blurred into a glittering mass of evening wear and polite smiles. I'm Kennedy Matthews, and after 20 years in Hollywood, you'd think public speaking would be second nature. 3 years ago, I met a young man living on the streets. I began, my voice steadier than my nerves. He'd been thrown out for being who he was. That night changed everything I thought I knew about privilege and identity. The words caught in my throat as I spotted her in the crowd, an Asian American woman in a perfectly tailored black suit, her dark eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. The rest of my speech flowed like a well-rehearsed script, but I couldn't shake the magnetic pull of those eyes. When the applause died down, she was the first to approach the stage. "Miss Matthews," she said, extending her hand, "I'm Nora Chen. Your words about LGBTQ youth homelessness, they resonated deeply." There was something in her voice, a hint of personal pain, perhaps, that made me hold her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Please, call me Kennedy," I replied, noticing how her black hair caught the chandelier light. "Are you involved with the foundation?" "I want to be," she said, pulling out a business card with practiced elegance. "I have experience in event planning, and I'd love to help organize future fundraisers." Her confidence was captivating, but there was vulnerability in how she fidgeted with her sleeve cuff. That's how we ended up having dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking Mobile Bay, long after the other guests had departed. The way she spoke about her passion for advocacy work made her whole face light up. "It's not just about providing shelter," she explained, gesturing with her fork. "It's about showing these kids they're worthy of love." "You speak from experience?" I ventured, watching her pause mid-bite. She set down her fork, meeting my eyes with a mix of caution and trust. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to feel different." The moment hung between us, heavy with unspoken understanding. As the evening wore on, our conversation drifted from professional to personal. She told me about growing up in San Francisco, her failed attempt at medical school, and her journey to finding purpose in helping others. I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone, my doubts about the artifice of Hollywood, my lonely nights in vast hotel rooms, the emptiness of relationships that felt more like business arrangements. When our fingers brushed reaching for the wine bottle, neither of us pulled away immediately. The touch sent an unfamiliar warmth through my chest, a feeling I'd spend many sleepless nights trying to understand. "I should get going," she said finally, though her eyes suggested reluctance. "Early meeting tomorrow." Outside, the Mobile night air was thick with jasmine and possibility. "I could use someone like you on my team," I said impulsively. "Would you consider being my personal assistant?" Her smile held a hint of something I couldn't quite read. "Wouldn't that be complicated?" "Sometimes complicated is exactly what we need," I replied, not fully understanding the prophecy in my own words. As I watched her disappear into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just shifted on its axis. What I didn't know then was how right I was, and how that shift would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, identity, and myself. 2 weeks into working with Nora, and everything in my world felt different. The morning routine that once felt mechanical now held an electric anticipation. She'd arrive at my Mobile penthouse precisely at 7, armed with a schedule for the day and that disarming smile that made my coffee unnecessary. "Your wardrobe fitting is at 9, she announced one morning, barely looking up from her tablet. "The designer's bringing options for the Alabama Film Awards." The way she moved through my space was mesmerizing, confident yet careful, like a dancer marking her steps. "You know I hate fittings," I groaned, watching her organize my schedule with military precision. "They always make me feel like a mannequin." She glanced up, her dark eyes twinkling. "Would it help if I told you I picked out some pieces myself?" The way she bit her lower lip made my stomach flip in a way I wasn't ready to analyze. The fitting turned into an unexpectedly intimate affair. Standing in my home office, transformed into a temporary dressing room, I found myself hyper-aware of Nora's presence. Each time she helped me into a new gown, her fingers would brush against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. "This one," she said softly, adjusting the shoulder of a midnight blue dress. "It brings out your eyes." Her breath tickled my neck, and I watched in the mirror as her hands lingered a moment too long on my shoulders. Our eyes met in the reflection, and for a heartbeat neither of us moved. The designer's voice shattered the moment. Absolutely stunning, Miss Matthews. Days blended into weeks, and our professional relationship developed its own rhythm, punctuated by moments that made my heart race. Like when she'd lean over my shoulder to review contracts, her perfume making it impossible to focus on the words, or how she'd absently touch my arm while talking, each contact feeling like a small electric shock. One night, we were holed up in my study, going through scripts for my next project. The clock had long struck midnight, and Mobile's nighttime sounds filtered through the open windows. Nora sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by paper, her usually perfect hair slightly mussed. "Listen to this dialogue," I said, sliding down to sit beside her. "Sometimes the heart knows what the mind refuses to see. It's almost too on the nose, don't you think?" She turned to face me, and suddenly we were inches apart. "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes the obvious truth is the hardest to accept." The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. I found myself leaning forward, drawn by some invisible force. Her eyes flickered to my lips, and I could feel her breath on my face. The script pages rustled as they fell from my hands. The sharp ring of my phone made us both jump. My agent's name flashed on the screen, shattering whatever spell had been woven in that moment. "I should go," Nora said quickly, gathering her things with trembling hands. "It's late, and you have that morning show interview tomorrow." I wanted to stop her, to pull her back into that moment we'd almost shared, but instead I watched her leave, my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Later that night, lying awake in my king-sized bed, I replayed every touch, every glance, every almost moment. The way she looked at me during fittings, how her hands lingered when fixing my collar, the electricity when our fingers brushed over coffee cups and contract papers. I was playing with fire, I knew that. My career, my image, everything I'd built could go up in flames. But for the first time in my life, the thought of getting burned didn't seem like the worst thing in the world. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder if Nora was lying awake too, thinking about that moment when the world seemed to stop, and everything but us faded away. The dangerous truth was, I was starting to hope she was. The realization hit me while watching Nora organize my closet one lazy Sunday afternoon. She was sorting through my designer dresses, humming softly to herself, completely unaware of my internal crisis. The sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows caught her hair, creating a halo effect that made my breath catch. "These Valentino pieces should be grouped together," she muttered, more to herself than me. I wasn't really listening. Instead, I was mesmerized by the graceful movement of her hands, the way she tilted her head when concentrating, the curve of her neck when she reached for higher shelves. "Kennedy?" Her voice snapped me back to reality. "Are you okay? You've been staring." "Just thinking," I managed, my cheeks warming. "You've brought so much order to my chaos." She smiled, that knowing smile that made me wonder if she could read my thoughts. "That's what I'm here for." But was it? The line between professional and personal had become increasingly blurred. Later that afternoon, my agent James called with news that sent my world spinning. "Did you know your new assistant used to date Christina Morgan?" My stomach dropped. Christina Morgan, daughter of Hollywood's biggest director, known for her string of high-profile relationships with women. What? "It was quite the scandal in certain circles," James continued. "Just thought you should know, considering, well, the rumors." I hung up feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Not because of Nora's past, though that explained her easy navigation of Hollywood circles, but because of the jealousy that surged through me at the thought of her with someone else. The mobile weather matched my mood that evening, with thunder rolling in from the bay. I was in my trailer on set, running lines for tomorrow's scene, when Nora arrived with script revisions. "Rough day?" she asked, noting my distraction. "Why didn't you tell me about Christina Morgan?" The words burst out before I could stop them. She froze, hand still extended with the papers. It wasn't relevant to my job performance, wasn't it? I stood up, suddenly angry though I had no right to be. "You don't think I should know about potential publicity issues? Is that really what this is about?" Her voice was quiet but firm. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating her face. I stepped closer, my heart racing. "What else would it be about?" "You tell me, Kennedy." She didn't back away. "Why does it really bother you?" The thunder crashed, and something inside me broke. I'm not sure who moved first, but suddenly my hands were in her hair, and her lips were on mine. The kiss was everything. Desperate, tender, terrifying. Her hands gripped my waist, pulling me closer as the storm raged outside. When we finally broke apart, breathing heavily, the world had shifted on its axis. "I've wanted to do that for so long," she whispered against my lips. "Why didn't you?" I asked, still holding her close. "Because you needed to figure it out for yourself." She traced my cheek with her finger. "And because I have my own complications, Kennedy. Things you should know." Another crash of thunder interrupted her, and my phone started buzzing incessantly, a set emergency, the storm threatening our shooting schedule. "We need to talk," she said, stepping back reluctantly. "Really talk?" I nodded, already missing her warmth. "Tonight. After we handle this chaos." As I watched her slip out into the rain, I touched my lips, still tingling from our kiss. Whatever complications lay ahead, whatever truths were yet to be revealed, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: there was no going back to who I was before Nora Chen stormed into my life. The rain pounded against my trailer roof, but for once, I wasn't worried about the chaos. Sometimes the most beautiful things are born in storms, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning of ours. After the kiss in the trailer, everything changed and nothing changed. We still maintained our professional routine, but now there were stolen moments. Fingertips brushing while passing coffee, lingering glances during meetings, and private smiles that held unspoken promises. The private beach near Mobile was our escape. Early morning walks became our ritual, away from prying eyes and the constant pressure of Hollywood expectations. That's where it all unraveled, both the carefully maintained facade and our hearts. "Look, paparazzi at 2 o'clock, Nora whispered one morning, squeezing my hand. I started to pull away, but she held firm. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." Before I could respond, the distinctive click of cameras echoed across the sand. My first instinct was panic, but looking at our intertwined fingers, I felt strangely calm. "Let them look," I said, surprising myself. Later that evening, as we sat in my penthouse watching the sunset paint Mobile's skyline, Nora grew unusually quiet. "Those photos will be everywhere by morning," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something you need to know before this goes any further." I turned to face her, noting the tension in her shoulders. "You can tell me anything." She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Remember when I said I had complications?" She paused, closing her eyes briefly. "I was born different. Intersex. I've spent my whole life navigating between worlds, never quite fitting into any box society wanted to put me in." The words hung in the air between us. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back slightly. "I understand if this changes things," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "My last relationship ended because she couldn't handle the complexity. Christina. She said she loved me, but couldn't deal with the public scrutiny if anyone found out." "Nora, look at me," I said, gently turning her face toward mine. "You're not a complexity to be handled. You're a person to be loved." The kiss that followed was different from our first, slower, deeper, filled with understanding and acceptance. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "I've never," she started. "Neither have I," I admitted, wiping away her tears. "But I want to figure it out with you." That night, as the moon cast silver shadows across my bedroom, we explored each other with tender curiosity. Our first time together was a dance of discovery, gentle and profound, leaving us both breathless and changed. Morning found us tangled in sheets, the first light of dawn painting patterns on our skin. My phone buzzed incessantly, no doubt James trying to manage the beach photos, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Watching Nora sleep, her face peaceful and vulnerable, I knew I'd fight whatever battles lay ahead. "Stop thinking so loud," she murmured, not opening her eyes. "The world can wait." "The world's already talking," I said, showing her the headlines now flooding my phone. Hollywood star Kennedy Matthews in secret beach rendezvous with female assistant. She propped herself up on one elbow, her hair beautifully mussed. "Are you ready for this? Once we step outside, everything changes." I traced the line of her jaw with my finger. "Everything already has. The question is, are you ready? Because if those photos get attention, people might start digging into your past, your privacy." "I'm tired of hiding," she said firmly. "I'm tired of letting fear of judgment dictate my happiness." But this isn't just about me, your career, your family. I silenced her with a kiss. My career will survive, and my family. Well, they'll have to learn to understand. You're worth it. The buzz of my phone grew more insistent. The world was waiting, demanding explanations and statements. But for that moment, in the quiet of my bedroom with Mobile's morning light streaming through the windows, we were in our own universe where nothing existed except us, and this new, beautiful truth we'd discovered together. Whatever comes next, I whispered against her hair, we face it together. She smiled, that radiant smile that had first captured my heart at the charity gala. Together, she agreed, pulling me closer as the morning sun rose on our new reality. The Matthews family estate in Mobile had always felt like a fortress of tradition, but today it felt like a battlefield. Mother sat across from me in the formal living room, her pearls gleaming as harshly as her disapproval. "This is career suicide, Kennedy," she said, her southern accent thickening with stress. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I watched condensation drip down my untouched glass of sweet tea. "I'm in love, Mother." "Love?" She practically spat the word. "With your assistant, a woman? Do you have any idea what this will do to our family name?" The antique grandfather clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Outside, Mobile's summer heat pressed against the windows like a physical force. "The board of the children's hospital is already questioning your position as spokesperson," she continued. "Your father would be." "Don't." I cut her off. "Don't you dare use Dad against me. He taught me to be true to myself. Being true to yourself doesn't mean destroying everything we've built." She stood, pacing the Persian rug. "I've already had 3 calls from the country club board members." My phone buzzed, a message from James, my agent. "Studio execs want to meet, urgent." Another buzz. Daily Mail running story on Nora's past relationships. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Back at my penthouse, James paced like a caged animal. "They're threatening to recast your role in the franchise," he said, loosening his tie. "But we can fix this. Issue a statement saying the photos were misinterpreted. Maybe announce a fake relationship with that new action star." "No." My voice was firm. "I won't deny who I am anymore." "Think about what you're risking," he pleaded. 20 years of building your brand." "My brand?" I laughed bitterly. "My brand is suffocating me?" Later that night, I found Nora packing her things in the guest room she'd been using since the media circus began. "What are you doing?" "Making things easier for you," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I've already drafted my resignation letter." "Don't you dare." I grabbed the shirt she was folding. "Don't make decisions for me." "Kennedy, look at what this is costing you." Her voice cracked. "Your mother, your career, your reputation. None of that matters without you." I took her hands in mine. "Do you know what I realized today? All these years I've been playing roles, the perfect daughter, the Hollywood star, the straight leading lady. For the first time in my life, I'm being real." She finally looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "I can't be the reason you lose everything. You're the reason I'm finding myself." I pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent. "Let them recast me. Let them gossip. I'll do independent films, theater, commercials for dog food if I have to. But I won't go back to pretending." A notification pinged on my phone, another tabloid headline about us. Nora tensed in my arms, but I just held her tighter. "Your mother will never accept this," she whispered against my shoulder. "She'll have to learn." I kissed her forehead. "Or she'll miss out on knowing how happy her daughter finally is." Outside, paparazzi cameras flashed through the penthouse windows. The world was watching, waiting for us to break under the pressure. But standing there, holding each other in the growing darkness, we were stronger than any force trying to tear us apart. "Stay," I whispered. "Stay and fight this with me." She pulled back slightly, studying my face. "Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything." I brushed away a tear from her cheek. "Besides, I hear there's a great market for lesbian actresses in pet food commercials." She laughed despite herself, the sound breaking through the tension like sunshine after rain. "Well, I do love dogs." Tomorrow would bring more battles, more headlines, more disapproval, more pressure to conform. But tonight, in our own private world high above Mobile's glittering lights, we had each other. And somehow, that made everything else feel manageable. "I love you," I said, the words feeling both new and familiar on my tongue. Her answer was a kiss that tasted of tears and promise, of endings and beginnings, of fear and incredible courage. The press conference room at Mobile's Grand Hotel buzzed with anticipation. Cameras clicked like hungry insects, and reporters leaned forward in their seats, predatory gleams in their eyes. James stood in the corner, shaking his head slowly. This wasn't part of his damage control plan. "I've been in the entertainment industry for 20 years, I began, my hands steady on the podium. I've played countless roles, won awards for pretending to be other people. But today, I'm here as myself, just Kennedy Matthews, a woman in love." The room erupted in questions, but I held up my hand. "Yes, the rumors are true. I'm in a relationship with Nora Chen. No, it's not a publicity stunt. No, I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm simply, finally, being honest." From the back of the room, I caught Nora's eye. She stood quietly, her presence giving me strength. But then I noticed someone else, a tall, elegant woman with sharp features and designer clothes. Christina Morgan. My heart stumbled. After the conference, Christina cornered Nora in the hotel lobby. I hung back, watching their interaction from behind a large potted palm. "Still making waves, I see," Christina's voice carried. "Though you've moved up from director's daughter to actual movie star. What do you want, Christina?" Nora's voice was tight. "To warn you, the spotlight burns, darling. Remember how it ended with us? Your unique situation isn't meant for public consumption." I stepped forward then, unable to stay hidden. Actually, her unique situation is perfect exactly as it is. Christina's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Kennedy Matthews, defending your assistant's honor? How romantic." "Partner," I corrected. "I'm defending my partner." After Christina sashayed away, Nora turned to me with worried eyes. "She'll talk to the press. She knows everything about me." "Let her talk." I took her hand. "We have nothing to hide." That night, in the privacy of our bedroom, Nora was unusually quiet. "Christina's right about one thing," she finally said. "The spotlight does burn. Then we'll burn together." I pulled her closer, our bodies fitting perfectly. The ensuing moments of passion were both tender and fierce, an affirmation of our commitment to each other. Later, wrapped in sheets and moonlight, Nora traced patterns on my skin. "I never told you why Christina and I really ended." "You don't have to." "I want to." She propped herself up on one elbow. "She wanted to keep me as her secret, said she loved me but couldn't risk her father's connections. When I refused to stay hidden, she spread rumors about me in certain Hollywood circles." I kissed her shoulder. "Is that why you were hesitant with me at first?" "Partly. But mostly because I could tell you were special, worth waiting for." My phone buzzed, another message from James about damage control. I ignored it, focusing instead on the woman in my arms, the way the city lights played across her skin. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about that charity gala where we met. How you stood out in that sea of fake smiles and air kisses. How real you were. Still are." She smiled, but it faltered slightly. "The road ahead won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." I pulled her closer. "Besides, I've spent 20 years making other people's stories come to life. It's time to live my own." Outside, Mobile's night air carried the scent of jasmine through our open window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this moment, we had created our own sanctuary, where nothing existed except our love and the quiet understanding that some things are worth any price. "We should get some sleep," Nora murmured. "Early meeting tomorrow." I laughed softly. "Still my efficient assistant even now?" "Always taking care of you," she replied, kissing me softly. "Someone has to." The world could speculate, judge, and theorize all they wanted. Here, in the darkness of our room, we had found our truth, and no amount of spotlight could burn that away. The lights of the television studio felt different this time, less harsh, more like sunshine. Oprah's familiar warm presence across from me made it easier, but my hands still trembled slightly as I adjusted my microphone. "So, Kennedy," she began, "you've been in the spotlight for decades, but never quite like this. What made you decide to come out now?" I glanced at Nora, sitting quietly in the front row. "Love," I said simply, "the kind that makes hiding impossible." The interview aired live and my phone buzzed constantly with reactions. But one message stood out from Sarah, my younger sister, finally watching my real sister, not just the actress. So proud of you. Mom's watching too. After the show, Sarah burst into my dressing room, her blonde hair flying. That was amazing. And wait until you hear, Mom actually cried during your speech about authenticity. She watched it? I felt my throat tighten. The whole thing. Even asked for Nora's number. Sarah grinned. Speaking of which, where's your better half? Meeting with the network about our youth foundation proposal. I smiled, remembering how passionate Nora had been during the planning sessions. Later that evening, I found Nora in our new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. We'd decided to make a fresh start in a place that was ours, not just mine. The mobile skyline stretched out beyond our windows, familiar yet somehow new. How did the meeting go? I asked, helping her unpack kitchen items. They want to do a documentary series about LGBTQ youth. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Following their stories, showing real experiences. They want us to executive produce. I pulled her into a hug, spinning her around. That's incredible. There's more, she said, pulling back slightly. Your mother called me. My heart stopped. And? She invited us to Sunday dinner. Nora bit her lip. She said, and I quote, "It's time I got to know the woman who brought my daughter back to life." I sat heavily on a nearby box. Are you serious? She even asked about my favorite dessert. Nora laughed. I think she's trying, Kennedy, really trying. The doorbell rang, Sarah, arriving with housewarming champagne and Chinese takeout. As we sat on the floor among half-unpacked boxes, sharing stories and dreams, I felt a completeness I'd never known before. To new beginnings, Sarah raised her paper cup of champagne. And family, Nora added, squeezing my hand. The evening dissolved into laughter and plans. Sarah insisted on helping decorate, though her taste in art was questionable at best. We argued playfully about paint colors and furniture placement, like any normal family. When Sarah left, Nora and I stood on our balcony, watching the stars appear over Mobile Bay. Remember when you were worried about losing everything? I asked. Seems like a lifetime ago. She leaned back against me. Instead, we gained so much more. Speaking of gaining, I hesitated. The adoption agency called. They want to meet with us next week. She turned in my arms, eyes wide. Really? They're considering us? They said our foundation work impressed them, and the media attention actually helped, showing stable, committed same-sex couples raising families. Tears sparkled in her eyes. A family of our own? We already have one. I kissed her softly. We're just making it bigger. Inside, our phones pinged with messages, Sarah sending paint samples, Mom asking about dinner preferences, James forwarding scripts for LGBTQ-positive roles. Our new life, buzzing with possibilities. I never thought I could have this, Nora whispered. A career I love, a family that accepts me, a partner who loves every part of you, I finished. Even the parts society told you to hide. The night air carried the scent of possibility, of future Sunday dinners and family holidays, of a home filled with love and acceptance. Our boxes might still be unpacked, but we were already home. We should finish unpacking, Nora said practically, though she made no move to leave the balcony. Tomorrow, I replied, pulling her closer. Tonight, let's just be here, together. Above us, the stars winked like promises, and below, Mobile hummed with life, our life, finally lived in full color, without filters or fears. 1 year after our first charity gala, we stood on the same stage where it all began. The LGBTQ Youth Foundation's inaugural event had sold out, filling Mobile's grand ballroom with a different kind of energy, one of hope and change. When I stood here a year ago, I began looking out at the sea of faces. I was playing a role. Today I'm standing here as myself, with the love of my life beside me. I turned to Nora, who squeezed my hand. And together, we're not just telling stories anymore, we're changing them. The Foundation's first success stories sat in the front row, teenagers who'd found homes, support, and acceptance through our programs. Their presence meant more than any award I'd ever received. After the speeches, during the dinner portion, my mother approached our table. She'd become a regular at Sunday dinners, but seeing her at an LGBTQ event still felt surreal. The Thompson girl, she said, nodding toward one of our success stories. Her parents are old friends of mine. They're talking about reconciling, thanks to your counseling program. Nora smiled. Sometimes people just need time and understanding. Yes, Mother replied, looking meaningfully at us both. They certainly do. James cornered me by the dessert table, practically bouncing with excitement. The streaming series about the Foundation is testing through the roof. They want to double the episode order. That's wonderful, I said, watching Nora across the room as she chatted with a group of donors. But I've been thinking about that movie offer. The indie film? The budget's tiny, Kennedy. But the story's important. A middle-aged woman discovering her truth? That's my story, our story. The night wound down, but the real celebration waited at home. Nora had news she'd been bursting to share all evening. The adoption agency called, she said the moment we stepped into our apartment. We've been approved. They have a 16-year-old girl. She's intersex, like me. They think we'd be perfect for her. I pulled her close, our tears mingling. When do we meet her? Next week. Her name's Maya. Nora's voice trembled. She wants to be an actress. We stood on our balcony later, watching the lights of Mobile twinkle like earthbound stars. The summer air was heavy with jasmine and possibility. What are you thinking about? Nora asked, wrapping her arms around me from behind. Everything, nothing. I turned to face her. The Foundation, the movie, Maya. Sometimes it feels like a dream. If it is, I don't want to wake up. She kissed me softly. Though I never dreamed we'd be here, making actual change in the world. Speaking of change, I pulled an envelope from my pocket. The realtor found a house, 4 bedrooms, huge backyard, close to the best schools. 4 bedrooms? She raised an eyebrow. Well, Maya might want siblings someday. I grinned. And your mother mentioned wanting to visit more often. Our mothers, she corrected, taking the envelope. They're planning Thanksgiving together, remember? Below us, Mobile hummed with nightlife. Somewhere in the city, teenagers like Maya were finding hope in our stories. Somewhere, parents were learning to understand. Somewhere, love was winning over fear. We should get some sleep, Nora said finally. Big weeks ahead. But we lingered on the balcony, holding each other, watching the stars. The future stretched before us like an unwritten script, full of possibilities, challenges, and love. So much love. Ready for our next chapter? I asked. Nora smiled, that same smile that had captured my heart at the gala. With you? Always. The night wrapped around us like a promise, and somewhere in the distance, tomorrow waited with open arms. Our story wasn't ending, it was just beginning, again and again, each day bringing new scenes to write, new lives to touch, new love to discover. And that's the thing about real love stories. They never truly end. They just keep unfolding, page after page, heart after heart, forever.